Welcome back to Two Who's Review. I'm Alex,
I'm Fitz.
and you join us for the 100th episode of Two Who's Review.
Holy shit.
It's been a little over 3 years to get to 100 episodes.
Yep.
It took about 170 weeks to get to 100 episodes. Woof.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
What a journey it's been.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I can't really obviously we could have if there wasn't a current season airing right now, we probably would have timed it so the 100th episode was something like I don't know, like a big important story, or like, you know, one of the big ones from the classic series, An Unearthly Child, perhaps Caves of Androzani,
Yeah,
perhaps.
okay, or maybe
Like
maybe the War Games.
the War Games, maybe even the Eighth Doctor movie, something big for the lore. But because we're in a current season arc, we end up with series 15, episode 5, the story and the engine. And you know what? I'm not mad about it, because 100
Yeah, neither
episodes
am
of
I.
the podcast, about 90 plus reviews, and our 100th episode is a review of an episode fundamentally about stories.
Mm.
That's
It is
pretty
really
great.
interesting.
Yeah,
Mm.
I watched this one today, and I'm surprised. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. The reason I'm surprised isn't because, like, oh my god, I didn't expect it to be good, but I actually think I might prefer it. It's my favorite episode of the season so far. I don't know what
Oh
it is
wow.
about it, but like,
Cool.
it just feels like the writer had like very specific things they wanted to do. There was a lot of like passion and heart in the writing and the dialogue and the storytelling and the presentation.
Yep,
It all
that's
came
true.
across. I couldn't find any flaws. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I actually really loved it.
Yeah, it was pretty good, and certainly there's a lot to like about this story.
Yeah,
Um
totally.
Even from the get-go, there's a level of confidence, because you see,
Mm,
like, the pre-credit sequence, one, even if that sequence wasn't hugely tied into the plot, it still would have been pretty remarkable. Like, I really like the using the animations to sort of tell the stories that the people in the barbershop are telling. Um, it's, I don't know, it's stylish and compelling. But then we learn that it is directly linked to the plot, and done so in a very clever way. Um, and I've watched it twice now, and it does infuse that opening scene with more tension, unsurprisingly.
yeah.
So yeah, even from the get-go, there's just a level of confidence, and I mean, certainly as far as I'm aware, what's the name of the writer? I should remember
The
this.
writer's name is Inua Ellams. I might
Hmm,
be butchering that pronunciation. Inua Ellams. Inua
mhm,
Ellams. I'm pretty sure I've got the Ellams part right. It's either Inua
hmm,
or Inua,
hmm.
but
Um,
he's the writer, and this is his first contribution to the world of Doctor Who.
well, it's yeah, he kind of kicked down the gate a little bit with this one, because it's pretty
Mm.
strong. Um, both in the sense that it's uh, I guess conceptually bold, because there's some pretty bizarre and very interesting ideas that are happening here, but it's also pretty well constructed. Um, the I like this is maybe obvious, but the way there are so many little setups that have great payoffs, and even
Yeah.
really little things pay off in ways that are really, really satisfying, and none
Mhm.
of it feels really forced in, I don't think.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
You know what
So
it feels
it's
like for me?
mhm.
Every God, I worry to even I hesitate to even bring this up, but this feels like a way more intelligently written meta episode of Rick and Morty. You know how every now and then, like once a season, Rick and Morty will do a thing where it's like, "Oh no, Morty, we're stuck in a story, Morty. We gotta get out of the story, Morty." They'll do something like that every once in a while, and it's usually kind of cringe. This felt like that in
Oh
part.
wow, Rick and Morty cringe.
Yeah,
What are you talking about,
shocking,
Cuff?
right? Shocking, right? But like, there were parts of this episode that harken back to like meta stories like that, where it's like,
Yeah, yeah, I see what you
fundamentally
mean.
about storytelling, and the doctor's talking about the stories that they've been a part of. Um, that's just the
And
vibe that I think specifically when we were looking at the story engine itself, the tree, and they're talking
mm,
about all that stuff. I don't know. Yeah, that's
I
just the
mean,
vibe it gave to me.
I know, I think it does make sense, and I think it speaks to the fact that Doctor Who can afford to take very strange risks.
Mm.
In terms of a lot of things, but certainly in terms of concepts. Now, granted, some of those risks pay off in some episodes better than others. I think in terms of the way concepts and plot are mixed together, I think this does a better job than Robot Revolution, for example. But it speaks to the fact that the writers of this show can afford to do very strange things and not only make it, make sense, but also have it be part of a compelling drama. Because when you put some of the elements together, right, you think
Yeah.
giant robot spider, barbershop stuck in space that's also on
Mhm.
Earth, something, weird stuff about stories that could have been weird to the point of almost being comedic. And if you want an example of a similar story, just go back to the Mind Robber, which, even though there were similar elements to sort of telling stories a little bit, this episode goes further, I think, but still similar stuff. But that story had a lot of comedy in it, and even the stuff that was fairly serious, there was almost something silly about it, like, Jamie losing his face and then the actor getting replaced for half of the story. I mean, like we said with that review, kudos to them. They did a great job working that
Yeah.
in. But the point is, as with a lot of things in Doctor Who, even with the wackier ideas, there's precedent to this. And it's great to see this writer tapping into that, but also doing it in a way that, again, really isn't. It's not silly at all. I don't really think. I mean, yeah, there's small bits of comedy, but the way the story is constructed itself, it's very compelling and heartfelt, I thought.
Mm.
Um,
Totally. Yeah.
you really, it's very easy to care about those characters, which is
Yes.
great. Even the barber himself,
Yeah.
villainous though he is, like, you get, even before the ending, you get that feeling where he's doing this, obviously, and he's choosing to do it, but you get the feeling that if in a perfect world he wouldn't be doing this.
Mm.
So even then, there's something compelling about it.
Yeah, and
So yeah.
thinking back, I think it's been a while since we've had a villain redemptive arc. I can't think of
Mm,
any of especially the 15th Doctor adversaries. I don't think any of them had did a turn. Um,
yeah.
I can't think of the last time there was a bad guy who was redeemed by the end of the story. But I especially like they made it completely make sense within the characterization and the storytelling. Like, this is a guy who had a really shitty hand dealt to him, and he's in pain
Mm,
and he's lashing out. And I think that's a very um, relatable feeling that we can
yeah, for
get
sure.
onto with that character. I mean, who among us hasn't done something they regret when they've been hurting? Like, I can think of several occasions when I've done stuff like that.
Hurt people, hurt people.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a simple message.
Mm,
Um, but on top of all of that, I really appreciate that they chose this setting for this particular story.
mm,
Not only just because it's not a location we get to see very often. I don't think we've
yeah.
ever been to Africa in modern Who specifically. Um,
I don't. Um. No, I don't even think it would have been
can't,
done in the
no, I
classic
know.
series either. I
Yeah,
can't. Anyway, yeah. But
but
certainly,
also like
it's
it. But there's something
it's new.
that I've yes, but also like there's something about and I think Sam put it best when the episode came out last night.
Yeah.
She posted in our Doctor Who
We
discussion
got a
group
group
chat.
chat.
Can't
She
wait
put
to
it
hear
in
your
such a
white.
Sam way.
Yeah, it's a very Sam way. She wrote, "Can't wait to hear your white asses talk about this one." And having not seen the episode yet, I was under the assumption there were going to be some heavy like racial themes that were discussed, and I think her thing was like, no, not specifically that. It's just more about the culture of it all and stuff like that. But there is
I mean, they are there, but I don't
they're
know.
there. They're certainly there, but it's not like this isn't a dot and bubble situation where like the
Yeah, where it's
like
like
the topic of like race and systemic that's like heavily like talked about.
Yeah.
It's not. It's definitely there. But what I like about Lagos as a setting for this story is that there's something about oral storytelling that feels very traditional. And I feel
Yeah.
like if you try to tell this story in a place like London, it's not quite as rich. But if you go to Africa, where a lot of like there's a very, from my understanding, like I said, I could be wrong, but
Yeah,
from my
can I just
understanding-
actually, before we continue, can I just put this broad disclaimer?
Yeah.
Cuff, you wouldn't be offended if I said that the both of us are, God, how can I put this? Incredibly
sheltered?
white in our lived experience,
Well,
as
yeah,
Sam sort of put it.
Sam
So,
already put it that way, yeah. So yeah, I could be wrong.
any commentary that we have on any of this episode, really, please, audience, take it with a grain of salt. It is
Yes.
entirely possible we have no fucking clue what we're talking about.
Yeah. But from what this episode presents, and also from what I've generally heard about African tradition, with the understanding that there are hundreds of African tribes and nations, and they all have their own traditions and beliefs in that. But oral storytelling seems so like entrenched in that part of the world.
Well, I mean, for sure, and they do even like they sort of link that in with that story.
They do, yeah.
About Yo-Yo Ma, the jazz bassist.
Yes.
Bassist. Anyway, some jazz musician, and he goes to Africa and he is trying to record a shaman singing a song, but he stops and he asks him, "Oh, can you sing it again?" And the shaman says, "No, that song's gone. I'm singing a new one." And the idea that the Industrial Revolution meant that I've got the phrase written down here actually. Just give me a minute.
Yeah.
To package time, I just thought that's really great. Actually, that's a really great way of explaining it.
Completely.
And I don't know, I don't know, maybe this is reading into it a bit much, but like, especially living in the age that we are, where everything, the image is so strong in a lot of societies now. We have, things like TikTok and things getting recorded every 5 minutes. I don't know. It's just that line itself. It's just an interesting concept to me. I'm glad that they brought it up.
And I think that's part of why I like this episode so much, because I have been for a long time now, my take on various episodes of Doctor Who that have like a unique premise or tone or atmosphere or setting, my take has always been do everything you can with this premise, because if it's the kind of thing you can only do once and you botch it, then I have less respect than if you just sort of like did a half job in a regular setting or premise. And although the concept of like stealing stories from people feels like the kind of thing Doctor Who doesn't necessarily have to do only once, but for the first time going to Africa, for the first time exploring this kind of stuff, they absolutely picked the right cast, the right writer, the right director. Like they absolutely committed to what they wanted to do. And I think that's a huge part of the reason why, like, I think there's a, I don't know, like there's a definite fear that if you give this premise and setting to the wrong person, it's not, it won't be as rich as it is. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if Inua Elams incorporated some like heavy elements from their own upbringing and past and stuff like that, because it just feels so real and lived.
Yeah, there's a very, like, there's a lot of detail, I guess. That the whole, like, all the character interactions feel very rich.
Yeah, but even down
and
to the Doctor walking through the market and just being like
yeah,
everyone he
there's
encounters being incredibly friendly towards him. I'm
there's
like, I
such a
would not be
love of the
surprised.
setting.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if that is what everyday life is like living in Lagos. If you're walking through the market and just seeing like person after person after person after person who you know, and it's like a very strong vibe, and you just literally every single time stop what you're doing and go and spend like 2 minutes catching up and hugging and stuff.
Strong,
like those
strong
moments
community, yeah.
specifically. Yeah, the sense of community is something that really shines through. Especially coming off of Lucky Day, where everything was so, like, you know, combative and divisive and, you know, person versus person, ideology versus ideology. Yeah. It's really great to see something like this and have it seem so real.
And it sort of, I think those themes sort of culminate in that one bit where Abby is telling the Doctor the story of the slaves who would basically not braid, but do each other's hair in a way that maps that would lead to freedom would be on it, and then that's how the Doctor manages to save the day. That's such a like, not only you bring in the theme of storytelling, but that sense of community comes in there too. That gets manifested in that small moment, because we think, oh, Abby, you know, she's on the bad guy's side, you know, what's going to happen here? But no, she sort of rallies together, and it's...
And again, I like that when she's telling that story, and it's goes into the plot in a really nice way, how the hairdressing becomes the thing that gets them out of it. It's like a nice little full circle Doctor Who moment. But like, in listening to the story, I didn't even for the slightest moment feel the need to Google it to check the historical accuracy. I felt like completely secure with this team that, like, no, I 100% believe that this is historical fact. Which is kick-ass. Like, that rules.
Yeah, it does.
Like, even like the context of that story in the world of Doctor Who aside, like, the ingenuity on display there, that's just fucking awesome.
Yeah. Also, tiny detail, neat direction where the camera kind of is above the hallways, and it's like a maze, and that just it's a small detail, but I really like that. Enhances the storytelling.
Totally. I was wondering how much impact Belinda was going to have on this plot for quite a bit. I did kind of feel like, is this going to be one of those stories where the companion's stuck in the TARDIS and has to do something there, or even not, just to get her out of the way, while the Doctor has a more personal encounter. And it didn't end up working out that way, and I'm glad, because, like, even for the small moments Belinda is interacting with the story, I feel like she gets a lot out of it. Like, she's imparts the hurt people mentality.
Yeah, and that's so important.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's a bit where she also figures out and tells the barber, hey, if you keep doing this, your machine's gonna overload and probably explode. So
she figures that out. Yeah,
it's really it is well done, because she's not. It's interesting. She's not like a massive part of the plot, but she's there enough to make it work. And the best part is, she doesn't distract from it, right? Like, Inua Ellams hasn't had to make the choice between making this like a super Doctor heavy story or a super companion heavy story. We've just got, like, it's all working in tandem kind of perfectly. And that, I think, is actually hard to do, because I think there would have been a temptation for other writers to just have Belinda in the TARDIS. And I actually thought at the beginning that's what was going to happen. When the alarm goes off and the lights go red, I thought, oh, is she locked in the TARDIS now, or what? You know, what's going on? But that's not what's happened. It's really well done.
And we do get that glimpse into, like, when we see the Doctor telling the story from Belinda's perspective. And I do like that he chose one of her, like, a story about her instead of a story about him. That's a very Doctor move. If not just being,
and it's that the ordinary life, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's what he would find the most extraordinary. Even after having lived as the 14th Doctor with Donna for that long time. I imagine I imagine he still like yearns for that, and now that he's back in the
for sure.
TARDIS again, he's like, oh, okay, well, I've had that. It was nice. I wish I could go back to it, but I'm needed again. And the story that he tells is just like such a. I'm sure every health worker has at some point been in a situation like this, like that. Like they talk about the whole like the medical crunch of like the hours that they work and the urgency that's placed on them. I'm sure that every single doctor and nurse has a story like this where they've been working too long and had somewhere they wanted to be, but have prioritized saving lives. And it's great to see, because we've had doctors in the TARDIS, we've had nurses in the TARDIS. Martha was in the TARDIS for a full season and got a few things after that. We never really saw her do nursing like this. We never really saw Rory do nursing.
Is Rory a nurse? Like I can't remember.
Rory's a nurse. Yeah, Rory's a nurse.
Yeah. I mean, we saw a little bit of it with Martha. I think in
a bit, but like there was
at
never
the beginning,
any,
but not much.
But like we saw her do nursing, but we never saw any like she's in a situation where she's nursing and it's life or death. Like we never really saw any moments like that from her. It was mainly like she's a nurse. She's like administering medicine and stuff like that. And she's
you mean a doctor?
With Rory, and with Rory, it was kind of played off as a joke where it's like, oh, someone's got their feet stuck in a toilet. He's got to help them get out. Or it's like I'm applying this like sci-fi medicinal thing to my dad after he got shot by a robot. But this is the first time we've seen a nurse companion actually like put in a stressful situation, let actual nurses get put in. And it's just that moment
even other scenes, right, where Belinda has to take initiative and treat other people in the series. I think you're right. It's emphasized more with this character than previous ones.
For me, it's the moment when the patient gets wheeled away. I initially thought that she died, but she didn't.
I thought that too, actually.
But I think the tears were more for I'm overwhelmed. I've done this like really long job, and I'm happy things worked out. I'm sad I missed what I tried to do. My nan needed me as well. Like this like overwhelming like cacophony of feelings kind of got to her in that moment. Less about the patient dying, which is what I thought. But that moment specifically, I was like, holy shit, that's so fucking real. That's what I think I liked about this episode the most. Like in amongst all the like we're animating the stories on the window. There's the
crazy spider living under the hat.
Crazy mechanical spider. The barber is in two places at once. The gods exist, which we'll get onto later.
That's a whole thing.
But everything surrounding that is just so fucking real.
Well, I'd go even further to say how sort of effective that is in that, as I said, a lot of the times when you have these wacky concepts in Doctor Who, it's tempting to go either the comedic route or to make it so over the top that's the thing. A fun sci-fi romp, as we've often said. Yeah. There are other Doctor Who stories where they will get very, very serious, whether it's like a dark horror-themed episode or a intense social commentary episode. But I think it's a bit rarer when you have a story that successfully marries the two elements, and I think this story does. Like the strange, outlandish concepts, basically perfectly woven into the plot, and into the themes as well. So. It's great on that level, which is really good. Also, small thing, but I will say with Belinda getting emotional when her patient got rolled away, I think part of it might also be I'm reminded of a line in Scrubs actually, where JD says, one of the worst things about working in a hospital is that you don't get to know how things end. So maybe that was part of it as well. Like she did her best, and we learned that she didn't die, and Belinda probably knew in that moment she wasn't dead. She was just being taken off for other treatments.
Yeah.
But it's still, when she meets this woman again, it does still come as a surprise, because again, she didn't know how that story ended, so... good stuff.
Completely, absolutely, yeah. I guess the mythological side of things is probably a good place to go to next. Because when the barber starts doing his big spiel about, I am Dionysus, I am Loki, I am this, and that. There's like the briefest moment where you're like, oh, Pantheon? Are we back here now? Is this the god of stories? But then you think for a moment and you're like, well, hang on a minute. Like, where are the rest of the signs? Like, I find it hard to believe this guy is going to break out that 7-note laugh.
I mean, the child that Belinda comes across, I mean, maybe that was a way to misdirect the audience by thinking, oh, is that the Harbinger?
Well, actually, real quick, do you know who that child was?
No.
So it's an actor that has been in the show before, despite how young she is. In fact, she was in last season. She is one of the babies in Space Babies. She's Poppy.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah. Not the only returning cast member, but again, we'll get there.
Yeah.
So yeah, when the barber's giving that spiel, and then the doctor goes on about nah. I
know all these.
I'm not him.
I know
all these gods. And then we get this like really genuinely interesting backstory for this guy, who for the entire episode has just been like. I think it's fair to say that for the first 2 acts of this story, the main thing that the barber has going for him is aura.
Yeah.
Like, it's the vibe. And the doctor mentions it as well. Like, he wants you to be scared of him. And for the most part, it's not... I mean, I'm not, like, shivering in my boots, but...
But there is an air of menace, right?
Menace, exactly, yeah. It's an effectively menacing character. And then he goes into his backstory about how he was essentially the scribe for all of these gods. And he worked tirelessly to tell their stories and his stories as well across the eras. And eventually the gods got to a place through this story engine that they didn't need him and then cast him out without any recognition. And, like, goddamn, that is just, again, another very compelling backstory for this guy. Yeah. Because in a similar way that we've all been in a situation where we've been hurt and lashed out, I'm sure a lot of us have been in a situation where we've felt that we've been hard done by and haven't received enough credit for what we've done.
Well, I think in a way it might even be deeper because, and this leads to another topic which I'm going to get onto, but like he says that I wish I'd been given credit for my work, and that's true. But I do think it's deeper than that. I think it's more the fact that
it's also about the lack of respect that they showed him.
Yeah, like it's the fact that his life was sort of manipulated.
Yeah.
And his significance was diminished to an existential degree by the gods, which is, I think,
yeah, totally,
a lot of people can identify with. Yeah, so I think that's it, which is why it works. Because I'd think even that that element of they stole they took my credit. If it was another story, another character,
that alone wouldn't have cut it. Yeah.
No, but with this sort of backstory, it does give it a lot more weight, I think, which is why I was almost questioning it, because again, they took his credit, okay, but then I didn't have to think about it too long to realize, no, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and also you just know that if this was a Chibnall era script, that's where it would have been. Again, the surface level of they stole my work, and then that would have been it. But no, like there's so much more depth and complexity to this guy that makes him feel so real. Unlike the majority of Chibnall villains, this guy I like. This guy like I sympathize with, and it's been a long time since I've come across a villain in Doctor Who that I have genuine sympathy for. Yeah, again, I can't think of the last time that most of the villains have just been, haha, I'm the bad guy, coming to get you, come over here, I'm gonna kill you.
I mean, they definitely exist, but it's been a long time for sure.
They exist, certainly. Like it's certainly been done before, but like again. The fact that I wasn't necessarily like rooting for him by the end, but I was like, again, I felt his pain. I felt where he was coming from. It was so real, and the actor did a fantastic job. Aryan Kare, as I think how his name is pronounced, absolutely tremendous performance. He just like like fully encapsulated this guy. He was apparently in the oh holy shit! This is the second villain that he's played in Doctor Who.
Huh.
He was in a mid-season Capaldi episode. I don't you're not gonna remember this, but the character of Ashilda, played by Maisie Williams, the one whom the Doctor made immortal.
I mean, yeah, I remember her character
Yeah.
broadly.
The second time we see her, she's allied with this like lion creature called Leandro, and his whole deal is that he's crashed on Earth in 1651, and it's again, it's just another I'm gonna kill everyone guy.
Yeah.
And he's got so much prosthetic on his face. It's no wonder I didn't recognize him. This is definitely the more memorable role. Like, this guy ate up every single second he was on screen, but he didn't like. It was like a subtle performance, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Like, even when he was like explaining who he was, like there was definite like melodrama there, but he wasn't like going over the top with it. He was like,
no, you could tell, like,
yeah.
I mean, I know this is easy to say now with hindsight because we know that was just a ruse, but
yes,
he managed to both be menacing, but he still maintained sort of that sense of humanity, so that it was surprisingly easy to sort of root for him in the end. And that obviously credit to the writing, but his performance, I think, is what really sells it, which is really, really quite great.
Yeah, totally. And we also have a secondary villain, Abena, or Abby, played by Michelle Asante, who was also in the Doctor Who episode In the Forest of the Night, the one where all the trees simultaneously decide to shield Earth from a solar flare. It's fucking bad.
That's a Capaldi episode, isn't it?
That's a Capaldi episode, yeah.
No.
She's just credited as neighbor. She's like a one scene, like, nameless character. Yeah, so I watched this once. There was a lot going on with her. So she was the daughter of
Anansi.
one of the gods, Anansi, and the Doctor Anansi had tried to sell her.
Yeah.
What's going on with that? And the Doctor had been the one to say, "I'm gonna take you," but then didn't. I admit I got a bit lost during this section because, like,
yeah, it was a little slightly confusing. You still got the weight of it, but the details
I couldn't.
For me, are still a little bit foggy.
I got the gist of it. She was upset at her dad and the Doctor for their involvement in the whole thing, and I guess it was more the promise of, "I'm going to get you out of this horrible situation," and then couldn't or didn't.
And then
like that's all you need. That's all you need for, like, and that's all you need to get her. Like, all the rest are just details, and I think on a second watch I'd know what to focus on more to figure out the full story. But we learned that at some point, Abena had encountered the Doctor. The Doctor had said, "I'm going to get you out of here," and then for whatever reason flaked on that. And has a grudge on the Doctor for that reason. That to me felt a bit like the most underbaked aspect of the story. I know I say that having just said, I didn't quite understand all of it, but I don't think it would have mattered that much because, like, again, it's the only part of this episode that really felt tropey in a similar way that in The Well, that one guy being like, "Oh, I don't trust the Doctor because," felt like the only tropey part of that. This again felt like, the person who allies with themselves with the villain without understanding the full scope of their plan because of a, like, personal grudge. Like, we've seen,
but it didn't feel cheap, and maybe that is because of the turnaround that she makes, that she switches sides. I mean, I'm sure I've seen stuff like that before, but it just felt very. There's an emotional vulnerability there, and I think it is enhanced by the fact that she's got this backstory with the Doctor, so that her, switch to the good side, to put it simply, it feels pretty believable.
And I think
not
the story
not cheap or anything.
The story that she tells about the slaves and the mazes in
Mm.
their hair, which is a very like that's not the right way of putting it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
like it feels like a personal story to the character, even though the character probably wouldn't have had to have gone through that because she's a god.
Yeah.
But like the situation with her dad, it definitely sounds like a similar-ish situation that she was
Yeah,
put in.
yeah. That's what you mean.
So the story that she tells there, while not personal to her, there's an element of like a personal quality to it. I don't know, like
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
it, Abby is like the only part of the episode that I was like, maybe I should watch this. I don't. I try not to watch these more than once for these reviews because I like to be. I like to leave that to you. I like to be the more okay. What can I gather from a first viewing kind of thing.
I'm the opposite, but that's I think
Well, yeah,
that's
I like
more
that.
of a
No,
that we
I
have that
agree.
contrast. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good dynamic.
Yeah.
But I think that if I were to watch it again, that would be the thing I would focus on the most, is trying to be like,
Cool.
okay, so what have I missed with this character? Because I don't feel like, having watched it once, I don't feel like it's an error in storytelling. I feel like I'm the one that needs to do better.
Yeah, I can kind of understand that. Well, I'm sort of similar. Like I've watched it twice, and there are like I know what happens, right? It's just that there's certain complexities with that backstory that I have to sort of think about for a few minutes. But that's fine. That's nothing.
Totally, yeah.
That's not a. I don't think that's a denigration of the storytelling at hand. And at the very least, I still get the impression, right? I don't feel like, oh, wait a minute, I don't know how I'm meant to feel here. No, I know how I'm meant to feel.
Yeah, totally.
So yes, I don't think. I mean, like at worst, you could say maybe it's a slight quirk, but even then, that's not really an issue. I don't think.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I
Do
think
better,
also,
audience member.
yeah. Well, I think a big part of it as well is that right when they're going into the full story, the show kind of throws something really unexpected at you and sort of catches you off guard and makes you lose focus for a bit. Surprise fugitive doctor! What the hell?
Yeah, that was.
Did not expect that at all.
No, and actually, it was funny, but I saw an article, like just a headline of an article, where it had a picture of from this episode, and it said, Doctor Who resurrects one of its most controversial storylines to good effect, and that made me really curious. I'm like, oh god, I have to watch this episode now. So I did. I literally just turned on the episode right after that because I thought to myself, when I think of Doctor Who and I think controversy, what can I think of there? Well, yeah, there's the Timeless Child stuff, but there's but you know, if you go back
like what
30,
kind of
40 odd years, you might find some forms of representation.
The surprise villain of this story is Wang Chiang.
Technically, it would be Magnus Greel, but yes.
Oh, okay, well, I haven't seen it yet.
So I thought, yeah, oh, all right. What are we doing there? Are we gonna? Anyway.
Yeah, I fully didn't expect to see.
Yeah, that was surprising.
And there's something about seeing Jo Martin, not just like footage or a face, but like the actual Jo Martin coming back into the role for like 5 seconds. There's something about seeing her outside of the Chibnall era that goes like so far towards legitimizing her character and that arc. I still don't like it, and I still don't like that they didn't put enough thought into it during the Timeless Child era to justify its inclusion in the lore. But seeing it now, I don't know, like I really fully agree with that headline. They resurrected one of their most controversial storylines, and they did it to a pretty good effect.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think maybe the only tiny issue I felt with that scene, and I only picked this up after watching it twice, but there's a line that she says about, I was sort of in a story, and maybe one day that story will be completed. I thought that was a little bit too meta for my taste, but that's a tiny gripe. It's not really an issue. Well, and certainly her inclusion writ large in the story is it was pretty satisfying.
Well, I didn't find it like particularly off-putting. I got the meta context, but like I could probably understand why that was thrown in because I do feel like Joe Martin is a better actor than the material she was given, more
Oh,
than like
hell yeah.
more than any other Doctor. Like John Hurt is also an outside of sequence Doctor, but they gave that character so much complexity and there's so much to
Yeah.
do in the 50th anniversary special that it really felt like hell yeah, this is the Doctor. Whenever I look at the fugitive Doctor, I don't see that yet. And I think it's because Joe Martin has literally been given fucking nothing to do while they've been the Doctor. And I kind of feel bad for that.
Yeah.
And hearing like the actual Joe Martin say like hopefully one day my story will be completed. It did for the first time kind of make me go, you know what? Yeah, I do want to see more of this character.
Oh, I do too, to be sure.
And I especially want a better writer to handle that era and give that character more worth than just this doesn't matter.
Yeah. Or ooh, wacky twist.
Yeah, totally.
Did you see that coming, audience? See how clever that is?
It also makes so much sense that out of any of the Doctors, the one who was literally on the run would be the one to flake on this person in danger, because in any other situation, the Doctor would have gone back for them, or at least tried to. But if the Doctor was running... I have to assume that this happened around the end of the Fugitive Doctor's life, presumably around the time they were reset and had their memory wiped and went back to being a kid and became William Hartnell. And I also... like, you could even take you mentioned the meta context of maybe one day my story will be complete, and that not being so great for you. You could also just truly see it as the Doctor themselves still not really knowing who they were at that point in their life, and still wondering maybe one day I'll find the answers.
Because I do forget, I don't know why, but I forget that, Joe Martin's Doctor comes like right at the beginning, or before the first Doctor, so that's
or Hartnell,
yeah, there's a huge context there. And speaking of the Doctor's story, we then get snippets of it in a way that
another, in a way that has happened a lot throughout New Who. We get like the footage from past episodes.
The montage,
the montage.
But it felt
times before.
It felt very satisfying. It was much better than, for example, and I know I'm biased here, but God, I still find the ending of the 11th Hour annoying. Like, I really do. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. We'll get to it next year. God, we're doing that next year. But
it's getting closer and closer, buddy.
We have fun here. We have fun. But anyway, I think in this episode it works really well. Not least of all because it connects thematically, and even in terms of plot, right? Because we see that the Doctor and their stories gets connected to the engine, so I don't know, man. It just feels right, and it doesn't feel like a cheap bit of fan service or anything. And it could have been.
I love on a personal... Well, speaking of fan service, I do like on a personal level the clip they chose for Capaldi, and it had to be the Zygon inversion.
I mean...
It had to be either that or Heaven Sent. It had to be one of those two episodes, call back. And they picked the right one, and I saw it, and I went, yay, my guy!
Yeah, no, it was good.
Oh, would you say I miss him.
There's a slight off topic here. Would you say that speech is one of the best moments in the Moffat era?
Oh, hands down. Like that entire scene, it goes for like 10 minutes. It was the first take. Capaldi nailed it in one go.
Wow.
Everything about that scene is just so fucking impressive, and it's wonderful. And we have to wait another 5 years to talk about it on the show.
Anyway.
Yes, we get to the end of the episode. The Doctor has decided to pour his stories into the engine, knowing how much there is. Again, it feels a lot like the ending of Timeless Children, where the Doctor decides, I'm gonna flood this thing with my memories.
The Matrix, yeah.
Yeah,
Except it
except
makes
in
more
thi-
sense here.
it makes way more sense here because this is a machine that one man built, and the other one was the nexus of all Time Lord knowledge that can store billions upon billions of years of their history.
Hmm.
It makes way more sense to do it here.
It does.
And again, like it feels like a very Doctor Who, and especially like for the character of the Doctor, it feels like a very Doctor thing to do, where it's like, well, I've done this and it's gonna go down. It's up to you now. I'm giving you a choice how you end this. Are you gonna choose kindness?
Hmm.
And it's
Or vengeance.
and to the Barber's credit, they show their humanity in that moment, like putting aside ego, letting the patrons of the Barber go.
Hmm.
It's a very nice moment, and I especially like when the Doctor talks the Barber out of self-sacrifice in that moment as well,
Mm.
because I feel like, and it's happened so often where the Doctor will decide to leave the villain in the mess that they've made and let them die in a situation like this. Like it's literally happened so many times where the spaceship's exploding and the Doctor's gone, well, I'm getting out of here. You can stay here. But, and I think this is the key difference. I feel like the Doctor in this moment has picked up on the quality of this person's character. Because in past situations when it's happened and the Doctor's decided to let them die, it's been a completely irredeemable asshole of a character.
Or they've made some decision. They've clung to their desires or their flaws, I guess, to the point that there was no other choice in the storytelling. And at the very least, even in stories where there's innocent victims like the Rachnos children, at the very least, he wound up getting condemned for that. So the point is, like, when this happens, most of the time it feels relatively justified. And
well, the example that springs to mind for me is Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. The villain of that story, Solomon, is completely irredeemable. He has throughout the episode, he either talks about or does gleefully and with no remorse. He murders a dinosaur. He hints that he's going to sexually assault Queen Nefertiti.
That's
He wants to he's like hostage taking and genocide of the Silurians. He does all of these things and he shows not a shade of remorse for them. And so at the end of the episode, when the missiles are locked onto Solomon's ship, the Doctor decides to just let him die. And I can't fault him for that decision. But in this scenario, he sees there's more to this person than their mistakes that they made, and he sees that they're mistakes and not, horrendous crimes. Or like, knowing like there's definitely like the context is important, and the Doctor sees the context and sees no, this person is not beyond redemption.
Yeah.
So I will attempt to save them, and it does so with a genuinely stirring speech.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that everyone survived the tale.
Yeah, it felt right. In fact, one of the clips that they show during the montage is, just this once, everybody lives. Yeah. So it's kind of great that it happened again and that it felt completely justified.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine like a similar, well, maybe not similar, but a redemption arc for a villain or something where everybody survives in the Chibnall era, and it frankly failing pretty miserably.
Yeah.
Totally. But yeah, it wasn't like that here. It felt just right, really.
Yeah. I don't think there's much more to this.
There is one thing that I want to bring up. In terms of the gods and how they fit into this.
Oh yes, totally.
Situation.
We started talking about that and then sort of beat off for a bit. But yeah, let's go ahead.
Yeah. So I had some. I don't know if I'd say mixed, but just interesting feelings about that.
Sure.
So part of it, and this might be my only issue with the story. Part of it does fit into some of the logic of the story and the backstory and how it all sort of weaves together. I'll get to it. The other issue, though, I must, completely admit, is a purely personal issue.
Sure.
So, that the barber feels this way about the gods. Correct me if I'm wrong, I could be misinterpreting this. It seems to be framed in a way that the gods are like a definite good and a full necessity, and that's fine. Like that's just part of the story. But I was reflecting on my personal philosophy, and it kind of goes against
Sure.
my philosophy of I think I've even literally mentioned it on the show. No gods, no masters. Right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm when I was watching Thor: Love and Thunder, I fucking hate that movie. But one of the reasons why was because I identified with Gore more than any of the other characters, because he gets completely fucked over by these incredibly cruel, vain gods, and in order to justify his villainization, they have to do. I'm pretty sure Sam's mentioned this before. The puppy killing machine.
Yeah.
Plot device, right? It's like, oh, wait a minute. Oh no, the villain's making excellent, coherent moral points. He kills puppies. He kidnaps kids, and he scares them by twisting the head off a doll when they're in a cage. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
So when I come to a story like this, that's the attitude that I take to it. So I was thinking, how do I feel about that? And the other weird thing is, maybe not in context of this episode, but in the context of the rest of the show, even this season, there's almost seems to be some moral inconsistency, right? Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but here we've got the Doctor. Yeah, like he is basically saying that these gods, the ones that he's met, are definite good, and that humanity needs them, and that they're connected to storytelling and whatnot.
Yeah.
But we literally had in this story an episode, Lux, where a god acts horrendously, and he's not the first one to do it. This is the third Pantheon character we've had. We've had characters like the Beast. I don't
look in my mind.
I don't know whether it's an issue of value consistency and exactly what the show overall says about this issue, but and I don't even know if it's like an objectively bad thing with this episode, but it's just something that crossed my mind when I was watching it.
Yeah, I think it's drawing a pretty clear distinction between the Pantheon of Discord and
it is
the other gods.
It is. I think, and I even thought to myself, well, I don't know, maybe this was a bit of cope, I don't know, but when the Doctor says gods, right, is that almost like a shorthand for just these, fairly powerful beings, because the line between fantasy and sci-fi gets kind of blurred in Doctor Who a lot, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I think it could just be the difference between gods, capital, and lowercase g.
Yeah.
Because, the Pantheon are, gods, but only in the sense of, they are otherworldly and, beyond
they're
comprehension within this dimension. Yeah. Whereas these other gods are pretty well comprehended. They are, completely different, from... Again, we haven't seen any of them, but from the descriptions of them, they seem very different. And, I don't know. I think it's probably going to be something that I wouldn't be surprised if it gets explored a bit more. If this writer gets called back to write again, they might expand upon it. I did specifically note that they were only referencing gods from polytheistic.
Yeah, I was going to say pantheistic traditions. It's not. That's one of the things I thought too. I find just in general. I'm not religious, as you know, Cuff, but I find the idea of pantheistic traditions to be far less disturbing than monotheistic ones, for example.
Even at a base level, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but
go ahead.
At a base level, everyone's personal beliefs aside, I don't believe in gods. But even then, the gods that were referred to in this episode were the ones from mythologies and past beliefs, and none from current beliefs.
Yeah, that's true. That's also another.
Buddha wasn't mentioned. None of the Hindu gods, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
capital G God, and
Yeah.
Allah weren't mentioned.
Yeah.
It was only from like Greek myth and Norse myth, and
Yeah. And Anansi comes from I've actually got the Wikipedia article here. I'm gonna just read like a quick sentence here. Anansi literally translates to spider is an Arkan folktale character associated with stories, wisdom, knowledge, and trickery, most commonly depicted as a spider in Arkan folklore. And Arkan, according to the brief description I'm looking at with Wikipedia here, is the Arkan people are a Kwa group living primarily in present-day Ghana and in parts of Ivory Coast and Togo and West Africa. So,
right. Okay.
But yes, like I see what you mean.
Yeah, there's a pretty clear distinction that's being drawn. Yeah, exactly. Like
sure.
the
I think
polytheistic pantheons of like the past are clearly being separated from any like all-knowing and all-powerful deities.
Yeah.
That
I think
are commonly observed today, and I think that might be the distinction when the Doctor's talking about that humanity's connection to these gods is important for their history and their culture and their development. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, even
the Doctor is drawing a line in the sand with like, no, there is a heaven and you will not be going there if you do this. Like he's not saying that.
Yeah. No. And actually, that's interesting. It almost reminds me of the Daemons, right? Because in that story, they're firmly established to have a sci-fi route, like they're aliens who have come to Earth to do this experiment. But in human traditions, they're sort of these godlike, dark sort of deities who have seriously impacted the progression of human evolution, which is a really weird concept when you think about it. But yeah, like maybe there's something like that as well. I think for me, when I just see a story like this, and again, this is where the very personal element comes. My gut reaction is to sort of balk against it. But again, you know the reason for that. Being friends for as long as we have, I've just got very definite feelings on things like that due to certain personal experiences, some of which I've covered in this podcast before. But yeah, I think you can understand why I felt that way. But
at the very least, at the very least, like again, from like a base level, I can understand the whiplash from last season, the Doctor decrying faith and what it lets.
Oh yeah, that was.
And then going on to this.
Yeah. I think. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I think there's enough of a distinction that I can.
Oh yeah, and look, to the story's credit,
so many lines in the sand here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think to the story's credit, it does still work really, really well. Like the fact that because for the most part, and I realize again, everybody's got personal tastes, and I know that when it comes to certain things I don't like, even in Doctor Who itself, I can get very intense. But most of the time, the feelings I get when I get very frustrated with the story, whether it be a Moffat story or even the elements of Lucky Day, right? They are, when I have those feelings, they're normally pretty accurate reflections of sort of like how I feel about the story and me detecting some genuine issue with the storytelling or even the values. Here, I didn't feel like that. Don't get me wrong, it made me reflect on my own values and made me think, oh, yeah, this seems to be a little different, but it didn't ruin the story for me. And at the very least, I said to myself, okay, maybe this is operating on a different value set than I'm used to, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, right? It's not like, it's definitely not like fucking, The Idiot's Lantern, which had this great potential for thematic expression and pissed up the wall. It's just different. And I think it works well enough in the story for it to be pretty effective and compelling. There is one last thing that I do want to bring up with this God's business.
Yeah.
And again, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm misinterpreting the episode here. Is there a strong enough link between the gods and the concept of storytelling? Which is to say, could you have done just the issue of storytelling without explicitly referencing the gods? And I'm not saying this as an ethical or value based thing. It's not like, oh, you got the gods in here, get them out of here. No, I'm just saying as a purely as like a storytelling plot consistency thing. I'm just wondering, is it like, am I off base there, or what do you think?
Maybe, I don't know.
Hmm?
I don't know enough about anthropology to say for certain if the tradition of oral storytelling began with mythology.
I mean,
And
that's true. Like, it does, like, that part, I think there's definitely a link there. I think my point is,
Hmm.
could the link have
Well-
been stronger or more intertwined, I suppose?
I mean, they're clearly talking about like storytelling from a place of tradition,
Yeah.
especially given the African connection,
Hmm.
and again, like oral storytelling. I maybe it's the place that we live, but when I hear like the tradition of oral storytelling, the thing that I often think about is the Dreamtime,
True.
the indigenous
Very true.
Australian, the
Yep.
indigenous Australian traditions of
Yeah, it's a really
telling
good
their
point.
mythology, and they would literally have, each Aboriginal tribe would have their own like storyteller who would like pass on the stories to the next generations and stuff like that. That might be a misinterpretation of what I was taught as a kid in my head.
This
But
disclaimer.
like, there's disclaimer. Yes, I might be wrong about that. Feel free to correct me if I am. But like, what is definitely true is the Dreamtime is an oral storytelling.
Yeah, the oral tradition.
Passed
For
through.
sure.
Yeah, exactly like that. Passed between, and
Passed down through generations.
and
Yeah.
and the Dreamtime is a mythology. So if you're talking about storytelling being connected to myth and gods, that seems pretty clear. I'm not necessarily.
Yeah,
I
true.
don't know if.
True.
I don't know if necessarily without the gods we would not be telling stories. I don't even think that's
Yeah.
what the episode's trying to say. But it is just so entrenched in
the oral tradition that they're
in
clearly
the oral
trying
tradition
to
of our history,
explore.
of our
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
And it all comes together in
It
multiple
comes
ways.
together
in
well
the-
enough that I can be like, well, even if it is like, even if that is true, and these two things aren't really connected in our world, again, they're connected enough that I can
to work for the
see
story.
why they chose to stick them together in this story. Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because that, and it wasn't until the second time watching it, but that theme of the oral tradition really does show up in a couple of significant moments. I really, really do love the story about Yo-Yo Ma. Like, that's just such an interesting perspective, right? Like,
yeah, completely.
and this is a weird thing, but like that they talk about modern music production techniques, right? I make music on occasion, and
Yeah.
I use entirely computer-based means to do it. So again, maybe there's not much of a connection there, but that just made me reflect a little bit on my creative process, I guess.
Cool.
Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting that they included that.
Yeah.
Um,
We're done, right?
yeah, I think so. I don't think there's anything. Oh, there was one line, and I know I bitch about stuff like this, but there's that one line where the doctor says of the barber, he's a troll hidden on the web, and I just thought it's getting close to that sort of memey line that just really gets my goat, but I'll give it credit. It was
Planet of the
surprisingly
Incels.
creative. Like, it works, right?
With the context of everything, yeah, exactly.
Of like literally the web. I thought, okay, that's actually kind of
Yeah.
clever. I just think, again, and I've said this multiple times, when I hear lines like that, I just go, don't worry, guys. Despite the fact the Doctor's over 1,000 years old, he's still hip with the kids.
Well, I actually think I think that's on purpose, right? Like, if the Doctor's current companion wasn't from 2025 London, they probably wouldn't be saying things like that.
True. I guess so. I mean, it's not as if I can't think of any specific examples, but I'm sure there's examples of the Doctor, the third or fourth Doctor using expressions that were common in England during the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. So,
Yeah.
There you are, I guess. Yeah.
Regardless,
Let's score this.
Let's wrap up. I think this was a phenomenal story. I'm going to give it a 9.
I'm really, really torn between an 8 and a 9. It was an 8, definitely, before we started this podcast. But yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 9 as well. I think you've swayed me a little bit.
Yay!
Yeah. I just it's too, not only is it like too ambitious to really knock down a peg, but it's even if there are some elements where I think, oh, could this have been done more cohesively, it's so well put together and it's so emotionally satisfying, in a way that a lot of Doctor Who stories aren't, really, like specifically in the way that this story is. I think a 9 is actually pretty fair. I think I would say maybe personally I enjoyed The Well more, but this is still in the same sort of area.
Yeah, totally.
It's just a very different story to The Well.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed with our point predictions. We're still sitting at 3,500 to 250.
Yeah.
3 episodes left.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling good about my chances.
I'm really still hoping for the I know this is insane. I think I saw, no, it wasn't a headline, it was someone making a post on Doctor Who Facebook fan page or something, and they were trying to, I only read like the first few sentences, but they were trying to posit the idea that Belinda was secretly a Time Lord, and I think they were referencing the genetic cloaking technology from the Family of Blood, and I'm like, for some delusional reason, I was rationalizing it in my brain. It's like, oh, maybe, but I don't think it's going to happen. But I'm still going to hold out onto hope there, because
if she is,
God knows that's the best that I've got at the moment.
If it is a Chameleon Arch situation, and
a Chameleon Arch, excuse me,
Belinda is a runaway Time Lord disguised as a human, do you think it'll be Romana? Do you think it'll be the Rani? Do you think it'll be the monk somehow, or do you think it's just going to be like a regular Time Lord?
I don't think it's going to be one of the villains. I think I honestly think Mrs. Flood is more likely to be the Rani at this point, given how she's popping up in time and sort of manipulating things. I'm not saying that that's guaranteed, but
I actually saw this earlier today that the BBC doesn't have the rights to the Rani. It's another
really.
It's another Terry Nation's Estate situation where it's the BBC gave the writers full copyright control of their own creations.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's less likely that if Mrs. Flood is the villain, she's definitely the Rani. It's not going to happen. The BBC could have arranged something to use her.
Yeah, but it's maybe less likely.
Yeah,
I think if it's the case that Belinda is another Time Lord, maybe Romana, but I'm more veering towards a whole new original character. That's my theory. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, totally. Happy 100 episodes. We've made it.
Fantastic. Yes, we've had a fun time, Cuff. And I will say, as one of my best friends in the whole wide world, it's been an absolute pleasure doing this with you, and I look forward to doing this for many years to come, including in the Moffat era, where I will have very specific and perhaps not too gracious things to say about it.
Well, that's the fun part, right? So far, we've generally been pretty consistent with what we've thought about the episodes that we've seen.
Yeah,
and I do wonder if next year we suddenly take a deep turn into widely contrasting views that make this whole, I look forward to this every week. You're my best friend in the world. I wonder how quickly that's going to be ruined by the disagreements that we have over Stephen Moffat.
Girl in the Fireplace Part 2, baby.
Oh boy.
Oh man. I'm laughing because I have to laugh, because I have to ignore the slight nervousness Now, don't get me wrong. You're one of my best friends in the world, and I love you. I think our
Mhm.
friendship can survive the great Moffat writing schism of 2026. But
Mm.
uh,
Well,
I
just
am
remember
I
that.
am
Just
mildly
remember that.
nervous. Let's put it that way.
Well, you say that like it's going to be a 1 year thing, but that schism will last until
Uh,
2031.
oh Jesus!
That really puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
I'll be 35 by the end of that.
Yeah.
Hmm. Oh boy.
And for those of you who have stuck along with us for these 100 episodes, thank you very much. Thank you, Sam.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you,
you very much,
Hadley.
Hadley.
Yep. Everyone else who's come on at some point along the way, thank you for tuning in.
Yes.
Here's to many, many more,
Yep.
including next time when we look at the episode that I've been the most curious about for a while, especially after the little next time snippet that we got at the end of this one, the Interstellar Song Contest.
I will say one thing about it, right? That concept, and I again, like as you said before, I'm loath to bring up the comparison, but
Mm-hmm.
there is almost a Rick and Morty element to that concept because I am just reminded
It
of
kind
the
of is.
show me the show me what you got
Show me what you got. Yeah.
episode. Oh, but I'm pretty confident it's going to be done better in Doctor Who. I'm uh pretty keen for that. Um. And hopefully it'll certainly be way less cringe than anything that's been ever associated with Rick and Morty, so we'll see how that goes.
But until then, I'm Alex.
I'm Fitz, and thank you to all our fans in time and space, wherever you may be. Join us again for more wacky adventures in this wonderful, bizarre show that people like. Yeah.
Wubba lubba dub dub.
Oh, fuck off.